Hello, good morning. I hope you didn't have any problems today regarding joining the class from uh, Blackboard Ultra. All right. Okay, so today we are going to try and discuss two things. I will share my screen first. Okay, where can we find answers to the trial quiz? If you go back to the quiz, you will get the answers. Okay, so after 11 p.m. yesterday, the quiz should be, uh, you should be able to get the answers to the quiz. Okay, let me share my screen. All right, so can all of you see the screen? The slide called headers. Yes, trial quiz is not graded, it will not count for your grade. Okay, so today what we are going to discuss first, this was supposed to be part of last class, but because of Blackboard problems, we missed some time. Uh, so let us look at these header files, right? So the header files are files which start with, I mean, end with .h. For example, we had this. We said hash include stdio .h, right? This .h is essentially saying that this is a header file. Now, what is the reason to have header files? Uh, so the header file is basically telling the program, the one in which it is included, what kind of functions or other constants are defined in the header. So so when you say stdio.h, then all the functions which have been defined in the stdio.c file, so that's a bunch of functions which are essentially for standard input output. So it of course includes the functions printf and scanf, which is the ones we have been using, and it includes some more functions which are meant for input output for file. So it includes uh, several functions which are quite useful, right? And so that's part. It's part of the standard library. Similarly, C has many other libraries. It has a math library. It has a library to deal with characters. ctype.h. You may have used it in the last lab, or the last lab is not yet over, but the lab that is currently on this week. Some of you may need to use it. Then there is a standard library and so on. And of course, many people have written many other libraries for a variety of things. Okay, and the standard way in which libraries are included is by creating headers, and headers are those things which uh, end with .h, and what they contain are basically information about the functions in that particular C file. Okay, so So they contain function information, and they contain uh, any global constants that you may have declared and which may be needed. Okay. So these two things are there, and the reason why you need them is that when you have a C program, for example, when I write something in my program, so let me try to explain that. So I have a program, let us say, I have this, I have int main void, and in this program I want to print something. Okay, so I want to print something, let's say hello. Now when I'm using this printf, and when I try to compile this program that I'm writing, this printf doesn't mean anything to the compiler, right? You have not declared it anywhere. It's not a function that you have declared. So how will the compiler know what to do with printf? Okay, and whether you have, now this is actually a call to the printf function. The definition of the printf function is not available. So how will the compiler know whether this call is correct or not? So the reason to sort of avoid, so obviously compiler will give you an error, right, if you do this. So the reason that you have .h files is because when you say hash include and give the standard library stdio.h, then this header, which contains now what are called function prototypes. You recall I told you about function prototypes in a previous class. So it basically gives you the header information. Remember, the header information contains the return type of the function, the name of the function, and the argument list, the formal argument list of the function. So once that is available, then the compiler knows, oh, printf, is it being called properly or not? Okay, so at least it can match the uh, arguments for the function. So it knows that printf is a function, and it's the arguments are, so it can check that. So while compiling, it says, oh, I know what printf is, and it is able to compile it successfully. So that is what happens in an actual compilation, right? So all these files that you write with hashes, they are all actually processed by the C preprocessor, right? You can also have defines here, something which allows you to define constants. So for example, I can say define pi is 3.14159. So this becomes a constant, pi, which is available now to everybody. Okay, of course I can also define it as a global variable. I can say float pi equal to 3.14159, right? Instead of this, I can also define it as a global constant. So all these kind of things can be put in the preamble. This is often also called the preamble, and this whole part is actually, there are some other things which you can put here, things called macros, which allow you to substitute macros throughout your program. We will talk about them later, but basically this preamble which is there, which is really before your program starts, is processed by something called a C preprocessor. Okay, by the C preprocessor. So what happens is you have your program. Okay, this is processed by the C preprocessor, which is part of the compiler, but it's a separate sort of unit, you can say. And then this will create another C file. Okay, so this will create a .c file, which is a C program, which is a C program. Okay, so where it's your C program is there and all the header information is included there, right? So details about the printf, any other libraries that you may have, they are all available there, so that when the C compiler starts working, it is able to look at all those look at all that information and ensure that compilation happens properly. Or if you have misused the functions, that is, when you call the function you have not given arguments correctly, then it will complain. Okay, then it will give you errors. So now this whole process can be used by the programmer directly, right? So instead of, these are standard libraries which somebody else has created, when you are using something, for example, we wrote functions for reading a sequence, right? So we wrote functions for reading a sequence. We wrote functions for printing out a sequence. We called it a print array, and we had a function which was just read. But you can give it any name. You can say a read array. So basically, such functions which are utility functions. So supposing you are working with sequences, okay, and you want to so you obviously want to read and write sequences, and you may be writing many programs, and each program is in a different file. For example, if I give you assignment for a particular week in which you have to do reading and writing of arrays, and then the next week I give you another assignment in which you have to do reading and writing of arrays. So all those C files are different. So the C file for the first week's lab will be different from the C file for the next week's lab. But what are you doing right now? You are basically, if you wanted to read an array and print an array in both the labs, you will include these functions in your C file, right? Like we did in the selection sort algorithm, for example, right? Or and any other algorithm which wanted to read or write an array, we kept including the print array and the read array functions, so that it understood what was being done and it could use those functions. So clearly that if you're writing a large program which has many such utilities which are your utilities, right, you keep using them in your programs, and you don't want to write your program in one single large file, because most large programs will break down into smaller modules. So there may be a module which does only input output. There may be another module which does some other processing. There may be a third module which does something else, and so on. So most large tasks break up into subtasks, right? And those subtasks are in some sense relatively autonomous. So you don't want to mix up all the C files into one single large C file. It means that every time you want to compile something, you are going to have problems, because you'll compile the whole file. So if it's a really large program which has thousands, tens of thousands of lines of code, then every time you want to make a small change in one subtask C file, you will end up compiling the whole thing every time, right? Not a good idea, very inefficient. Also could lead to errors. So the obvious thing to do is to break all these files into independent C files, separate C files, right? So once you have this uh, way of structuring large C programs, then these C files, where they are using utilities from other files, need to know about them, right? So you have to therefore then create your own header files. So like a file which reads and prints arrays. So for reading and printing arrays, we saw that many uh, programs which read and print arrays will keep requiring it, and you don't want to keep including it there. So what you do is you convert your reading and printing program into a library. Okay, so you convert it into a library, and then so that the program which uses the library, then it should know what is available in the library, right? And what is the nature of the function, that is what is the name of the function, what is the what are the arguments that the function takes, what are the types of those arguments, and so on. Essentially you need the prototype of the function to for the compiler to be able to decide that the call of the function is correct, is proper. So for this reason, uh, the whole thing can be, you can convert some of your code, which is utility code, excuse me, into libraries. And that's what we're going to look at today. Okay. And what do the so when you convert something into a library, there are two parts. So you want to create a library. So there are two parts to this. So one is the the header file. So this is the file which has the .h extension. Okay, and the second is the actual code. Okay, so this this is the actual library. So this is the place. So if you are looking at, for example, stdio.h, so this is the header. The header file is a normal text file and it contains all the prototypes of the functions that are in this particular library, right? So prototypes of functions, okay, and any other constants or global variables. Constants, global variables that you may declare, right? And the actual code of these functions is compiled separately and kept in the library, which is an archive, right? So whenever you create a library, compile a library, a specific file, then it will contain, it converts it to something called uh, a .o file, right, for object. And this .o file is then put into an archive. An archive is normally always given the extension .a. So because this could contain many libraries, could contain many .o files. Okay. So uh, so this particular thing will allow you to create a library. So now let us see. So these two parts. So whenever you want to create a library, you have to have a header file, and then you have to have a library file. The header file has the .h extension, and the library file has a .a extension. And when you compile it, you have to actually mention this fact that use this particular library. So because this is your library, either you put it in a place where the compiler can find it, or you will have to give it explicitly when you call the compiler. When you say GCC and give your file name, you can include also the name of the library in which you have put your functions. So it could be one or more libraries. So that is the way in which you use libraries, right? So let us now go to libraries themselves. Okay, so C, as I told you earlier, has many libraries. Okay, and libraries can be what are called static and dynamic. We are not going to look at dynamic libraries right now, but basically, a static libraries, the library code is linked in when the executable is generated, right? So you remember we normally keep saying things like this: GCC compile some file, say f.c and minus o, and then we give something. Let us say we say put it in R. This file R is the one which is the executable, because this is the file which you execute when you typically say dot R, right? This is the file which is executed. So this is called an executable. So, so when you want to when you use library functions inside your file f.c, for example, the printf and scanf functions, you've been using them extensively, right? Now, when you actually call the compiler, the header files that you have mentioned in your f.c, so in your f.c you would have things like hash include stdio.h, right? So you will have stdio.h. Let me rub that out a bit. Okay, so you have stdio.h, and so what the compiler will do is it will go to a particular standard place which has been already declared when you installed the GCC compiler. So there are so-called environment variables which are defined, and it will go to that place and search for stdio.h, right? Once it finds the header file, the preprocessor will then include it as part of your C program. So all the prototypes which are in the stdio.h will be included in this, in your program. In some sense, it's an intermediate step, the pre-processing step, and then it will compile, right? And when you do static compilation, what happens is that uh, the code, the executable code, is included in this R. Okay, so now R is completely independent and standalone. So you can distribute it in, and give it to anybody else on another computer which uses the same, let us say, system. So for example, just like you install various kinds of executables on your Windows operating system, so assuming that your processor and operating system is the same, it will run, right? If I have compiled it, I have created an executable program, I can now pass it on to you, and it will run on your computer as well, assuming that you have the same processor and or similar processor and the same operating system. So so it becomes portable, right? So for example, all kinds of Windows programs, you download them, executables, you download them from sites and install them on your computer, and it works. So exactly that is what this allows you to do. It allows you to create a static program which is all linked in. All the functions which have been defined in the libraries are part of your executable, and that is why it is called a static library, right? So the code in the library, excuse me, the code in the library is linked in, or it becomes part of your executable. It's inside this. Right? Now, you can also have something which is more interesting, which is called a dynamic, okay, library. So this is more interesting in the sense that the library code is loaded and executed at runtime, right? So what happens is that it is not part of your executable here. What is put here is something which says, okay, this function is needed, uh, go and load it from the uh, disk right now, and then execute it. So these are called dynamically linked libraries, or more short, in short, dynamic libraries. Okay. So they are called dynamic libraries. So in this case, the library code is not part of the executable. The full library code is not part of the executable. What happens is that it is able to read the code into the uh, executable at runtime. So when your program is running, it goes and finds the library function and reads it into the program and then starts executing it. Okay, so those are called dynamically linked libraries. You have different ways of doing it in different operating systems. So it will not work if you take a program which is on Linux and run it on Windows. Okay, so Windows libraries end with .dll, right? So that's called, that stands for, you may have heard of DLLs in Windows operating systems. So Windows operating systems, the DLLs are dynamically linked libraries. The DLL stands for dynamically linked library. In in Linux based systems, dynamically linked libraries don't have a DLL extension. Okay, they have a different extension. So what you have therefore is a situation where if you have dynamically linked libraries, then if that library is not available, then your code will not run. Okay, even if you are using the same system. So this is something. So if the .dll file that is necessary is not there, it will not run. Similarly, in the on a Linux system, if the dynamically linked library is not available, your code will not run. So when you give out code, then you will have to give out the library along with the code, right? The dynamically linked library along with the code, and tell the runtime system where it can be found. So if you want to make things really portable, then you may want to actually use static libraries. So you can use a static library, so all the code is part of the executable and you don't have to worry. At the same time, dynamic libraries can be extremely efficient in the sense that they can be shared. The code size becomes smaller because all the library functions are loaded exactly when you need them, and then they don't become part of a huge executable, right? Because if the library, all the library functions that you're using become part of the executable becomes bigger. So for large programs, you may decide to use dynamic libraries, and uh, when you want to give out the code to someone, you will basically give the basic program and also the libraries, the dynamically linked libraries, so that the entire thing can run. So we'll at some point we'll go and study make, which is a utility which kind of builds the entire system for you. And when we do that, we will see how all these things can happen automatically. Right? Automatically, in the sense you have to write a small program, a script, which does it using the make utility. But once you have done that, then all the details get taken care of through what is called a make file. So we'll be studying this later. But here let us just look at how a library gets created. Okay, so there are lots of questions on the chat I see about the quiz and the class. On the quiz, the quiz is a 15-minute quiz. It will be at the beginning of the class, and there will be a class after the quiz on Saturday, right? Because we are unable to find a common slot where we can hold the quiz, because the class is very large and it has students from all kinds of uh, departments, uh, and so there are time clashes throughout the week. So there is not a single free slot where we can hold it separately from the class. So all quizzes will be held in the class. Lab quizzes will be held on Sundays. So since these are short quizzes, to make sure that you are up to date with whatever is happening, we'll be having these short quizzes regularly. And lab quizzes will start holding them as soon as uh, we are you have done a few labs so that you are comfortable at least with the compiling, running, and all that. Yes, all quizzes except the trial quiz. The trial quiz was to make you familiar with how a quiz is taken in Blackboard. Henceforth, all quizzes are going to be graded. It will count as part of your grade. Okay, so we'll have enough of them so that you don't need to get tense about it. Uh, and each quiz will count for only a very small part of your grade. So it doesn't matter if you don't do well in one or two quizzes. Okay. Same thing holds for lab quizzes and so on. So we are going to break this down into a large number of small quizzes and so on, so that one single exam, either a mid-sem or an end-sem, does not affect your grade too much. The time for the quiz we'll see. Don't bother about it too much. If necessary, I will increase it. Okay, so let's get back to the lecture now. So I told you about static and dynamic libraries. So now how do we create a static library, right? So once again, the the process may be slightly different on different platforms. Uh, so I'm going to explain to you what happens on using GCC on Linux, right, as an example. So on GCC, the details will differ slightly on Windows. Right? You can look up videos, or you can Google or search for how to create C libraries on Windows. You will get a lot of information there. If you are using GCC, the process will be the same. So if you are using MinGW and GCC, there is no difference. Okay, so here is what is happening. Okay, so so remember, when we were writing our functions, or when we were writing C programs, we always had a we always wrote a main. Okay, we said int main void and so on, right? And we said that the executable that this program R, I mean, this is the executable of the program f.c. When it starts executing, it starts from main. It starts executing the first statement of main and then keeps on executing this. Main can call other functions. These other functions can call yet other functions, and so on and so forth. So the entire main function is basically executed by and it controls, you can say, in some sense, or directs the entire program. So it's uh, the program starts by executing the main function and then goes ahead and does it can call other functions can call yet other functions, and so on. All the computation happens via calls of functions and any other expression evaluation that may be necessary. And finally, control returns to main, and then it exits whenever it sees a return. Okay, it will get out of this program and your program stops. So this is how an executable works. So when you just simply say GCC, and that is what we have been saying till now, you say GCC, you give a file name, let's say f.c, you give a name for an executable, which we have been calling R or whatever it is, A, B, C, whatever, then this will compile this and create an executable which is called R. Okay. So this particular process demands that there is a main in the file. F.c must contain the main function. If this main function is not there, GCC will complain. Okay, GCC will give you an error. However, when you are actually creating libraries, then libraries are independent by themselves, right? They don't need a main function because they are meant for others to use. So when you want to compile that, you basically use this. Okay? You say GCC, you give a flag called -c. So -c is essentially saying that that this particular file does not contain a main function. This file contains functions which are meant to be converted into libraries. So what it will do is it will compile it, and here you have to give the name of the library. Now there's a convention in C to always use lib as the first part of the name. So this, the moment you look at the name itself, you know that this is a library. And then you give the name of the file, which is the C file name. Like I've got G functions here. So this contains the library functions, and therefore the library name that I am giving it is libgfunctions.o. Okay, O here stands for object code. O stands for object. So object code means machine code. So we will be discussing machine code and machine language a little later, but basically this is the code which will directly run on your machine, right? Your computer cannot run C. The compiler does the job of taking your C program and converting it into machine code, because the computer only understands machine code. And there is a machine language. Each processor has a machine language, and that is what it is converted to. And we'll see a dummy. Dummy means a small uh, hypothetical computer with a certain machine language, and then you will understand how that works. So this stands for this library. So it has now created this .o, right? Now what you will have is to now put this into an archive, because this you may want to put many of your all your stuff into a single library instead of putting it in separate libraries. Okay, so this is the archive function. Now this again may be slightly different on different platforms. This is what works for uh, Linux, right? So AR is the archiving program where you can uh, add files to an archive or remove files to an archive. So this is exactly, or this similar to your zip, right? When you submit your programming assignments, your lab assignments, so you're doing problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, so you put all your code, all your C files into a zip file, right? So that is an archive. I have not tried it yet. You can try it and see, but it's quite possible that your zip file may also work as a library, because all it requires is basically just that uh, all these files which are present. So here, for example, a file like lib functions is present, and there may be many other files you compile with -c, because you may have different libraries, and you can put it all in a single archive for your project, right? So you can put all those files in a single archive for your project, and once you therefore include that, you are able to use all the libraries that you have defined for yourself. So your utility functions may themselves be in different files. So that is the reason for creating the archive. Okay. So that has a .a extension, as I told you. So this archive RCS is a set of flags given to the archive program. It essentially says create a new archive with the name this, and add these files into the archive. Here we have added only one file. Notice that this is basically this file, this one, which was created earlier by GCC. So finally, this A thing, this is your library. And how do you use it? So notice that now you have to kind of give some more flags to GCC. Okay. So let us say this is the function you are compiling. Okay. You have to give a -l and give this dot here essentially says that the library is present in the current directory, or you give the directory where it is present. So you may have decided to keep all your libraries in some directory, fixed directory, where you keep all your library functions, or all your libraries, that is your .a files. And then you have to give -l and give the name of the library. Okay. So this part, namely -l and location, and -l name of the library, is extra. So these are called flags. -L, -l, these are flags, and they can take arguments like this. The rest of it is similar. Notice it is GCC, the file you want to compile, and -or. So -or means this contains the executable. Okay, and GCC, and the file name is whatever you have, say f.c. This part is now telling the GCC compiler which library use. This one, right here, G functions library. And where will the library file be found? So notice that if you say -l, you are only writing the name of the library. The library is called, the library file has a lib before it, and then the name, which is G functions, and an extension, which is .a. Now this and this, as I said, is assumed to be standard. So you just give the name G functions, which is your file name, and the compiler automatically understands that the actual file name will be lib gfunctions.a. You don't give the whole name, remember. Okay, just give this part of the thing with -l. So given this, the compiler then will compile it and create an executable which is inside this R, just like earlier, right? So basically it goes into the library, picks out the already compiled functions, and adds it at a suitable place to R. So now what has to be done in f.c to be able to do this? Just like you said, include stdio.h, now you have to include your own library. So you will have to say include the header file of your library, so whatever it is. Now when you include your own thing, you will put it in quotes. So you may call it, normally this part is the same thing. So if your library is being called G functions, then you want to call it G functions.h. right? So the file f.c will contain this statement in the header or in the preamble, gfunctions.h. Now this is your library, your header, which tells it what are the functions which are available in the file gfunctions.c, and the compiler will then compile it, and this part tells it where the actual compiled library is available, and so that will be put together with the compiled f.c into R. So it becomes a complete executable, static executable, right? So this is statically linked. So this becomes statically linked. So all your library functions and everything are inside this. And now you can execute it anywhere. What is this question? Why can't we just import the code file instead of creating it as a function? Well, this is because C has this way of doing things, right? So import, etc. is used in other languages. For example, in Java and Python and all that. So in Python you can import modules. In Java you can import other classes or other files. So the it's just that the whole language system has a certain way of doing things. Okay? So this is the equivalent of import, including the headers is really the same thing or equivalent of import. Okay, so now let us see an actual example. So I will share a different, I'll share my screen with you now. Okay, so here is the here are three files now. Notice that this file which I am showing you right now is the file gfunctions.c, right? So I am including some standard io.h, the stdio.h. I am defining a global variable called pi. Okay, so this is a global external variable, and then I'm writing some functions in it. Notice that there is no main function here. Okay, yeah, you will see that the include that we'll see in the separate file. This is the file which is contains the library functions, right? The functions which I want to use in my library. So these are the utility functions. So these are obviously dummies. It simply says printf in g1 I equal to percentage d and I, right? And there's another function g2 which is doing the same thing. So these are just functions, but in an actual application, there will be utility functions. For example, it may be read array, write array, things like that. And there is a float here pi, which is a global variable, which will be of course accessible throughout this file. But pi being a constant, you may want to make it available outside. So now look at the file g.h. Okay, so what it does is it declares only the prototype. So it is saying that pi is a variable, its type is float, g1 is a function which returns an integer and has a single argument which is an integer. Similarly, g2 is a function which is also returns an integer and has an argument which is an integer, one argument which is an integer. So a header file basically contains the what are called the prototypes, right? The prototypes are essentially the type information for if it's a just a variable, if it's a function, then the return type, the name of the function, and the arguments and the corresponding formal arguments, right? So whatever comes before the curly brackets. Similarly, if it's a constant, some global constant, you just have to declare its type and the name of the variable, which is defined globally in the file. Okay. So now this library is where am I going to use it? I'm going to use it here. So I have given this. So this name here, you can give anything you want. I have called it g.h, but the correct sort of uh, way to do it would be to call it gfunctions.h, right? Give it exactly the same name as the C file that you have, which is this one, right? Maybe let's do that so that we don't. So I will save this file also as gfunctions.h. Okay, so that we are all right. So now everything is clean, right? So we are calling it gfunctions.h. You have the corresponding file, which is gfunctions.c, which is the implementation of all the header information. Namely, it contains the body of g1, body of g2, and the value of which is defined as a global variable. And in the file f functions, I'm using this. I want to use the library, so I'm defining or including the header. Right. Notice now it is without the angular brackets. It is with quotation marks. So this means that this is not a standard library. The C compiler knows where to look for a standard library. But when you are using you are giving the library, it's your library, then you will have to tell the compiler where to look for it. Okay. So here I have my own functions. I have defined something. Notice I am now calling the G function. So when this call is to be compiled, the compiler has the header information. So it knows that G1 is a function and that this argument 100 is okay because it's an integer. So it's proper, so it can go ahead and compile. Similarly, when here G2 is being used, it again realizes that it is not defined in this file. However, it, it looks in this header file, right? Well, the preprocessor has already done all this, so these prototypes are already become part of the intermediate file. So it has information that g2 is a function, it has an integer argument, so it can compile it. Similarly for printf, so printf, it sees that, oh, it is in stdio.h, its header is there, this is okay. So this is how libraries will be used. Now this is an executable, so I have a main function here. So I'm calling f1 with 10, f2 with 20, and I'm printing this variable pi, which is not defined anywhere in my files. It's there only in the library. Okay, I have declared it in the header that it's a float pi, so it knows that pi is a float, and it's been defined here. Right here, it's a global variable, and it's been defined. Global variables are also called external variables. So this is the file in which I'm going to use this library. Okay. So let us do that. So I've actually run those things, I think, already. So notice that here, since we are running short of time, I'm not typing in those commands. I've already done that earlier. So notice that libfunctions.o has been created. Libfunctions.a has also been created. Okay, maybe let's just gcc minus c. I don't want this thing. There's no g functions. Okay, minus O lib g functions dot O. Okay, this is what I had to do. So I do this. I forgot the C there. Okay. So now I have compiled this, right? Notice that if I look here, it has created this file called libfunctions.o. Now I can put it into the archive. Okay. So I call the AR function. These are the flags which tell it to create it, include some kind of a contents page to tell the compiler what are all the files included and so on. And so this is exactly the command that I showed you here. Uh, this command. Okay, arrcs libfunctions.a, and I put all the files that I want to put into that, right? So this is what I will be doing. So I have rcs and lib g functions dot a lib g functions dot o. Okay, so this has created the archive. So now this has created this particular archive. Once you have done that, then you go to and execute it using this command, right? The file, give minus L, the location. Now, in my case, the file is in the same directory, so it's the current directory which is indicated by a dot. So gcc f functions dot c minus capital L dot, because the library is in this. Okay, minus L, give the name of the library without the lib. So just this. Okay, so notice this part, and then the location of the final executable minus OR. Okay, it's compiled, and now I execute. Right, so it's saying in F1 I is equal to 10. Now in G1 I is equal to 100. In F2 I is equal to 20. In G2 I is equal to 200. So a float pi value 3.14. If you notice, what we have done is just given 0.2 here, right? So it limits it only to 2 decimal places. Right? So notice that I'm calling G2 with 200, G1 with 100. Okay? And here I is the value of this I, and I'm calling it with whatever 10 and 20. So you can see that the library functions have been called and they are behaving correctly. Okay, we have already overstepped our time, so let us stop here for today. Okay.
Sir,
Ah,
so today also many students were not able to join. Many were joining through BB Collaborate Ultra also, but they were getting uh, to the Collaborate Ultra another session.
yeah, I'm a little mystified about what this Blackboard problem is. I talked to the IT team and they said
This class,
that I'm trying to remember if I set this for the big class, which is greater than 250. I normally do that when I create the session. Uh, I will try to. I will try to yeah, ensure. Every time I create it, I go back and change the settings to ensure it's a big class. I'll just see if I did it today.
Yes, I also checked that it was like for 250 students.
Two more than 250. There's no 250
Yes,
limit.
more than 250.
So that's
In,
what I do every time. So I'm a little mystified why this is happening. So let me
yes.
try to see. I
Even
will.
some students are saying if we can shift to Teams for classes,
Uh,
if we can consider it in future.
we'll look at it separately because lots of things
Okay.
are organized on Blackboard now. We have to sort
Yes,
out the
sir.
Blackboard problem separately.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.